At this moment now, I'm the man in the black hat. And I'm going to lead you through a little guided meditation. At the end of my talk and sermon, I will have us just sit and dwell quietly. But at this moment now, just a little bit of instruction and humor, maybe. Des, I'm looking at you. I know this is a hard thing to do. In fact, it's nearly impossible to stop all thought. And the way we can practice this, though, is to think of something like a mantra or look at a mandala. So eyes open or eyes closed as you're comfortable where you're sitting now. And just relax. I would suggest both feet on the ground once again. Feel the ground. Yeah, good. Yeah. Hands can rest any place comfortably. And now just sink in a little bit more and realize where you are, where your thoughts are coming from. Just for a moment, imagine some of the best times of your life, maybe at the beach, cuddling a new baby, whatever brings you peace and harmony, gentleness to your soul. That's where we want to start today. And in spite of everything that's external, we can be at peace within ourselves. All right, let's begin. And we'll switch the podium if we could. Jim? Yes, thank you. Very good. You might have guessed that I had some experience on stage, but that was a long time ago. This morning, I want to be in oneness. What a concept. Or is it even that which we can categorize by words so simply as that? It's a concept. Actually, it's indescribable. And I like to call this a shift of consciousness. Today, I will begin by recalling some of my own experience in this realm of consciousness. I will also be leaning heavily on the writings of Eckhart Tolle. That's Tolle. Please also note we will not go immediately to the talk back after my prepared words, but we will take a moment of reflection. Yeah, a shift of consciousness often occurs as a kind of awakening. Sometimes an epiphany, many ways this can happen. It's following the theme actually from last Sunday, another kind of experience. But you may recall in 2021, I gave my talk on a near-death experience. It was entitled Love, a Shift of Consciousness. And I mentioned then that the seed was planted by the incident of the NDE, and it continues to grow into heightened mindfulness, enlightenment maybe, but I just simply like the word awareness. I'll begin today with a quote from a book published in 1993 by James Redfield from the Celestine Prophecy, a novel that uses an adventure motif to describe 9 insights that are indications of greater awareness in life's journey. The first insight comes up, well, we call it synchronicity today, but the quote is, the priest put it this way: the first insight occurs when we become conscious of coincidences in our lives. And so my own story of that insight was most recently illustrated in that short video clip we did during the offertory. I had just compile this video today. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear all the music, but I wrote these words. In this case, I will read them because they still kind of ring of the moment. I answered the call to sing in a chorus on Sunday, January 8th. I had no clue what it was about. It was just convenient for my plans already made for that day to be in Times Square for a matinee for Hadestown in the Walter Kerr Theater on 48th near Broadway. That's all I knew when I saw the local NBC News Friday night, January 6th. And Saturday, I registered for myself and then my wife, Sophia, and we received the score and libretto by email. And we began rehearsing. Actually, there's the bass part and also the alto part in this folder that we received that day on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we actually drove in for the first rehearsal with the composer, Daniel Bernard Roumain, and poet Mark Bamuthi Joseph at the Open Jar Studio at 10 a.m., which just so happened to be next door to the Kerr. And at around noon, we walked over to Father Duffy Square to rehearse on the stairs and then wait until we went up at 2 o'clock for the full performance with the soloist and the musicians in the chorus. And I don't know if you know anything about that area. It's where the steps are, and Father Duffy's statue is there, a minister who, had a church there on 42nd Street. It was it was Sunday. It was a spiritual experience. And I'm still trying to process what the meaning of that is. But the libretto is a poem in memory and metaphor of what happened to the theater district around Times Square at that start of the pandemic in March of 2020. I will quote the composer's note of DBR, which I only read I only read on the Monday the day after. This work is a celebration of survival as we all navigate through the devastating effects of a pandemic and grapple with a worldwide struggle for social justice and freedom, truly for all. What is the role and responsibility of living in a time of conflict and death? Perhaps it's to live with joy and to affirm our love for one another by meeting, seeing, and singing. Here's from the libretto. Here lies joy, the Lazarus, here. Raised voices gather us. Here raised voices in the shadow of a hazard that inhabited us all. Joy was on its way to its own funeral, but stopped in Times Square to look. The people awoke in costume in the cloak of a lot of time spent alone, drenched in the scent of more time than normal at home. Joy remembers, rides like people climbing democracy, rises like voices over sirens serenading the city. The Lazarus risen gathers us in. Now that's a shift of consciousness, all right. It's one of those Celestine moments from Tal and the oneness of all life. At the heart of the new consciousness lies the transcendence of thought, the newfound ability of rising above thought, of realizing a dimension within yourself that is infinitely more vast than thought. Here's the word, transcendence, right? One of the 6 sources of our UU tradition. What is that? It's the very first one actually mentioned in our sources. The direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces with which create and uphold life. I'm sorry, I got to say this. I submit this as Unitarian speak for the title of today's sermon, Oneness. I got to use a lot of words. Oneness. Just a side note here that the focus of the discussion of UU's changing the words of Article 2 has been the 7 principles. That's the principles. Not even much thought given to the proposed changes to completely eliminate the sources right out of Article 2. Now, Reverend Roger Jones, senior minister at UU's in Sacramento, noticed this last year, preached a whole sermon on this idea of what happened to transcendence, the direct experience of mystery and wonder. He references our UU tradition being greatly influenced by Tagore. He was a leader of a liberal Hindu movement in India called the Brahma Samaj, which had a relationship with British and American Unitarians since the 1800s. You heard his words today as Emily did the reading from our hymnal. The stream of life that runs through you and all things. What is that? But don't think of it, how to describe it in words. Just sit with that. I'll say it again. The stream of life that runs through you and all things. So today, as you know, or some may know, I had scheduled a guest preacher, but 2 weeks ago he sent me a notice that he had to reschedule. I was not expecting that, but I was preparing for that possibility. And, you know, Reverend Mark had said, hey, one day maybe you could do a sermon on your experience at Times Square. Oh, here it is. What a coincidence? But in the minister's email to me was the Latin phrase. Now, I'm certainly not much of a scholar when it comes to Latin, but it's pronounced vocatus atque non vocatus de anderit. That phrase over also the door of Carl Jung's home in Switzerland, often translated as called or uncalled, God will be present. Now, that origin of the phrase has been attributed to the Oracle of Delphi. So that Latin phrase must have really come from Greek. And then Jung wrote that what it meant was, yes, the gods will be on the spot, but in what form and to what purpose? Jung was pointing out for his patients to have a direct experience of what it means to be in the presence of God. Okay. So, Unitarians often have a problem with that word. Bridget.
Through the present moment, you have access to the power of life itself, that which was traditionally called God. As soon as you turn away from it, God ceases to be a reality in your life, and all you are left with is the mental concept of God, which some people believe in and others deny. Even belief in God is only a poor substitute for the living reality of God manifesting every moment of your life, says Toll in the Oneness with All Life.
Thank you. But even so, you still might miss the point I'm trying to guide you to realize today, who you are. So let's just go one more step. And I was going to have Bill read from the remote, but as we're having difficulty in our audio today,
I don't know if you can hear me.
Unfortunately, Bill.
No.
It doesn't come through. So I'm just going to read it here. So just as space enables all things to exist, and just as without silence there could be no sound, you would not exist without the vital formless dimension of who you are. We could say God, if that word had not been so misused. I prefer to call it being. Being is prior to existence. Existence is form, content, what happens. Existence is the foreground of life. Being is the background, as it were. so maybe you're still asking yourself, how does this bring us to a less divisive culture? How does oneness get us to unity? Do those words mean the same thing? As I read it, they're not the same thing. Unity is the combination of different people or ideas taken then as a whole, like the United States. Really? Never was. Always a compromise. But oneness is one more step, or perhaps a bigger leap into consciousness than unity. It is the awareness of just what is. And all that is in order. You might say divine right order. We just can't see the larger scheme of things. And there are no coincidences. How does that fix anything we want to do to make the world a better place? Again, from tall, and I'm asking now, Sarah, get a different voice.
To be in alignment with what it means to be in a relationship of inner non-resistance with what happens. It means not to label it mentally as good or bad, but to let it be. Does that mean you can no longer take action to bring about change in your life? On the contrary, when the basis for your actions is inner alignment with the present moment, your actions become empowered by the intelligence of life itself.
Thank you, Sarah. So, we're getting close to our time together. I want to close with a quote that just popped up, no coincidences, I might add, on my Insight timer from John Steinbeck, the famous author, not usually considered religious. If it is right, it happens. The main thing is not to hurry. Nothing good gets away. So now, let's just sit quietly. We already went through pose and posture, what you want to hold, but we're going to just be quiet. Just dwell on your being in the moment of now. Let's come back.
All right, we'll have a little bit of discussion. Folks on Zoom, please bear with us. I could always call up the chat if you wanted to speak in the chat, but we'll start here in the room if anybody would like to come forward and or have a comment. Mabel has a comment.
In light of what I just shared that happened to me this week, let me tell you something. A brush with death will do exactly what you're asking. So really a new awakening, a new appreciation for just being. I can honestly say I've never been so scared in my entire life. I'm a reasonably brave person and tough and, stoic kind of, but this experience was just the scariest thing I've ever lived through. And I certainly have a ton of appreciation right now for the changes that are going in my spiritual life and the communities that I belong to. And it was what your sermon was specifically perfect for me today. So thank you.
Thank you for your open heart. Anybody else in our midst here?